Hi, and welcome to Heart of the Earth. I'm talking about a very serious topic today because I want to know, you believe in God? You say you trust God? Well, what if something really terrible happened in your life? Would you still trust Him with your heart? Many of us profess to be Christians. Many of us say we're going to stick with God through thick and thin. But what if one morning, after you served God all night, working for Him in the ministry, what if you got a call that your son had gotten shot and killed? Could you officiate at his funeral a week later, singing praises and love to God? I find this story fascinating, and I would like to introduce you to my guest, Pastor Jeremias Antonetty. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you.
Pastor, we're going to talk about that awful day. But first, would you tell me what your life was like about when you were in your 20s, just for a minute or so? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was always interested in music. I grew up in a musical family. You know, my father was a professional musician. He played with people of his age, who were known. And, I was always interested because I heard my father play, and for some reason that it always, sunk in. And so I pursued a music, career. I started at 12. I started at 12, actually. By the time I was 19, 20, I was already hooked on drugs. And I did, was doing shows, but I was always hooked on drugs and alcohol. And it was pretty intense.
And how long were you an addict for?
I smoked my first cigar when I was 7.
First cigar at 7, wow.
I got high off of that.
Well, you did, sure.
Yeah, and then I started drinking. I took my first shot. It was maybe about 8 years old.
That was young. That was young. Did the drugs and alcohol, was that prevalent in your family?
Yeah, my brother was a drug addict, and that kind of plagued us.
I did. It's hereditary,
generational.
So let's fast forward now. You're in your, 50s at the time when this call came in?
I was actually 48, something like that.
48. You're in the ministry. Tell us what you were doing at that time when you lost your son. What was going on in your life, in your marriage, in your work life? What was going on in your life?
Well, we've been at Christian Pentecostal Church for about 12 years now. So at that time, we were maybe 7 years, 8 years in it. And doing good, love ministry, love the Lord, love His people, and we're just having a good time. That particular night, though, we had a concert, and Alvin Slaughter was there, and we had a really good time. And we finished about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was Saturday morning. And we, cleaned up, went home, went to sleep. And then about 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from my daughter saying that I believe that, she said, I believe my brother is dead, something to that effect, because they found his wallet. So I said, maybe somebody robbed him, and the person that has his wallet, but it wasn't. It was my son.
So then what happened? The police called you? Did you have to go down there? What happened?
Well, actually, it was really interesting. That Friday that Alvin Slaughter came down, Pastor had gone on vacation for 3 weeks with his wife, and I was the next in line with him. So he said, Jerry, you have to take care of everything. So I had to preach those 3 Sundays and do the worship and do everything. So on that Friday, when that happened, Saturday morning, Sunday, I got up, went to church.
Wait a second. Your son, Saturday morning, you get a call at 9 or so in the morning that your son had been shot and killed.
Right.
And the next morning, Sunday, you were the preacher at church.
Yeah.
What did you preach about? I'm sure you didn't forget. You don't forget.
I shared on Abraham.
Why Abraham?
I think because we can identify with Abraham,
For the viewers, share a little bit about Abraham.
How he Abraham was chosen by God, to be the father of our faith. He's actually was called at 75 years old. He came out of his family's life. He came out of his, country to follow God. And lo and behold, about maybe 20 years later, 25 years later, God asked him to sacrifice his son.
I see. So that is why you felt that was appropriate, and it was obviously.
I was actually, that message was prepared even before that happened.
Tell us.
Well, I had to, preach that Sunday morning, so I had been studying already.
Oh my, you're telling me that you had already been preparing the sermon about Abraham being asked to sacrifice his son.
Yeah.
And you didn't know, of course, that you were going to speak that, having just lost your own son.
Yeah, I touched on many things, but that was one of the things I touched on, but I also shared on God's covenant, how he's faithful.
God is faithful.
Yeah, he's always faithful.
You shared with me that through this, you were healed, and that in the midst of the tragedy, you glorified God. What do you mean you glorified God? What do those words mean, glorify God? We use them, we throw them around. What do you mean by that?
Well, I lead the worship of the church, and one of the songs that we were singing was Blessed Be the Name of the Lord. And on the second part of that verse of that song, it says, Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Mm-hmm. When I sang that.
When you sang that, you felt you were...
It hit home.
It hit home. So in your suffering, leading this church worship, your church family, where you were serving for years, and here you are leading the worship and singing those songs to God. In my suffering, I will worship you, God.
Yeah.
So you were able to give, that's how you gave God glory. That's one of the ways.
Yeah, and also because the man who wrote that song said that he lost his son.
Did you know that when you were singing that song?
I don't remember. I don't remember quite well, but I know that I found out about it or something to that effect, but yeah.
It sounds like God orchestrated your part in this service from before time, because here was the sermon, and part of it had to do with Abraham being called to sacrifice his son, which, by the way, for the viewers, an angel stopped him, and he did not have to.
So speaking about Abraham.
Speaking about Abraham.
Yeah.
And also with this song, so glorifying God. So you led the worship, you preached.
Yeah.
How did it go with your family?
Well, before we go there, one of the things that happens that when I got the news, and on that Sunday, the Lord put in my heart that he wanted me to stand and just serve him.
Stand and serve.
That serving him was not a matter of anyone's life or death, that I serve him because he's my God.
Wait a sec. I want to go back for a minute.
I had to put all that
That's very
aside.
important. The Lord shared that with you. But first, I forgot to ask you. Tell me how you got to be close to God. How did you, because you said you were a drug addict before, in your 20s or whatever.
Right.
I jumped ahead to that fateful morning.
Yeah.
What happened in between? When did you come to become a believer?
Well, through a long string of polyphonies and hurt in life, I was at the age of 23, and I was at the point where I just thought I was going to take my life. I just wanted to die. And it was in a little apartment in the Bronx where I was living, a one-room apartment, where I had my encounter, and Jesus just came to my living room.
You had a personal encounter with Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
He appeared to you physically?
I can't say. I don't know if it was physically. I just know that it was just glorious.
Were you sober at the time?
Yeah.
You were sober, so nobody can say, oh, he was high.
Yeah, no, I was sober at the time, and came into my living room. I just fell to my knees. And I heard the Lord speak to me for the first time.
And what did he say?
He called me son.
Oh, you remember that. You'll never forget that.
No.
So you came to know Jesus as your Father because he's part of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, but you came to know him as your Father at that moment.
Yeah. And he told me that I was going to serve him. And that was 30 years ago, and I've never gone back.
You've never gone back.
No.
This is a story. This is what we call a testimony. Yeah. So you were in your 20s, and through the next few years, what did you spend your time doing? You were no longer with the drugs and the alcohol.
I was led to a church, and from that point on, I just served God in the church. I've always been a musician in the house of God. And he put in my heart that one day I would be a pastor. And lo and behold, that came true.
You're married.
I'm married. Yes, I am.
Tell me about how this all affected your wife and about her healing. How did you get healed through all this, the two of you? How did that work?
My wife was really strong during that time, and she comforted me. She let me, you know what? She let me grieve.
Mm-hmm. Was this her son also, by the way?
No.
But still, I'm sure it was painful.
Well, yeah, sure. She took care of him. From a child.
From a young age.
But one of the things that I learned through this about the healing process
Tell me.
was that whenever I got that pain, because that pain was so deep, it was like somebody taking a vacuum cleaner and putting it inside of you and sucking out everything and leaving you empty, and then someone coming putting a ball of pain inside of your inner being.
Oh, how do you heal from something like that?
I worship God.
What do you mean by that?
When the pain came, I would turn to Him and I would glorify His name. I would thank Him that He gave me, children. I would thank Him for being good to me, and I would just focus in on Him, and the pain would subside immediately.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, many times I had to do that.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
How would you tell the viewers who maybe have never trusted God with their life or are going through something similar right now? How can they start? The average person can't just say, I'm in pain and I'm going to start trusting God, I give you the glory. What would you suggest?
Well, the Bible tells us that He's the God of all comfort,
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you're going through. The Bible says He is the God of mercies and He's the God of comfort. And there's nothing like finding a good place and sitting down and being comfortable where you don't have to move. And with God, no matter what you're going through, you can run into His arms because He's always there. And He holds you close and gives you that comfort. He gave me great peace.
God gave you peace.
Great peace. Great peace. I felt that He was just touching me and holding me and putting inside of me strength.
That nobody can do that for you. Only God Almighty can do that.
And I know a lot of people have lost children. I think one of the hardest things that my son went through is that he was raised up in two different atmospheres.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he would come with me on the weekends with our family, and we would go to church, and we would talk about God and, Bible study. And then he'll go home, and unfortunately, his mom was not in that movement, and she was not serving the Lord in that way. So there was negative talk, and I really want to bring that out. There was negative talk
about God or
about me.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And so one of the things I want to tell the viewers is that whether you have God or not, if you are a single parent, and mother and father is still in the picture, and the sons, or you have your sons and your daughters, don't speak negative about one another to your children.
Very destructive.
That became very confusing to him. And he hit the streets.
Aye.
And he just became a thug. He
did.
lived in the streets, because the streets embraced him.
Yeah.
And so he got involved in many things. And, you live in the streets will kill you.
Well, that's what happened.
He got shot.
He got shot.
He got shot.
My goodness. Are there any scriptures that have been particularly meaningful to you through the years that you would like to share?
Well, in John chapter 14, he tells us that Jesus said, peace I give unto you. My peace I leave with you. Not as the world gives. He says, but the peace I give you is real peace. And I think that word, that peace, that's a serene peace of God, it's not a temporal peace, it's an eternal peace.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was telling someone today, I have joy in my life. If they asked me if I was happy, I said, well, I'm not always happy, but I always have joy.
Tell us about the joy.
Well, joy comes from knowing that you have a relationship and fellowship with God, that it's okay. He accepts me for who I am. He accepts all that I am for who I am because He knew me before.
Before you were formed in your mother's womb.
And I always find it a mystery. I mean, you knew I was going to mess up. You knew I was going to do all these things, and you still, had a plan for me.
Now, did you ever get angry at God through the years at any time that this happened to your son?
No.
You never once got mad at God. I can't get over that. We all do when we don't get our way, and this was something major. This was a major tragedy you went through.
But no, because I've come to trust God so in my life that whatever happens, it's in His hands.
Wow.
And I'm comfortable with that.
Wow.
Yeah, very comfortable with the fact that I'm in His hands, and He really is in control of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's peace in that.
So when when bad things happen to good people, we can find peace through relationship with God.
Just trust Him. And I got to the point where you lose one child. I said, Lord, they're all yours. Because I have 6 children. I said, they're all yours. If you took them all, I would still have to trust you.
That sounds like Job. Though he slay me, though I still...
I said, if you took everything from my life, what can I do? Would I grieve? Of course I would grieve. I mean, if there was possessions, taken from me, yeah, I would probably miss them. But I don't live for possessions, and I don't live, to please myself. My whole agenda in life is to do the will of God.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to ask you one more question. Did they ever find I assume it was a man who killed your son?
Yes, they did, yeah.
And have you ever been in touch with him?
No. It wasn't that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a hotel, and a fight broke out, and he shot him. And there was a lot of other stuff behind that. But the first Sunday that I had to share the word,
mm-hmm.
I finished. Then Monday morning I flew down there to North Carolina to pick up my son in a box.
My goodness.
So we come back Wednesday, and then that Friday I had to go and buy a suit and all that stuff, and I did the funeral.
You officiated. You did the
yeah.
sermon,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's just unbelievable.
And he left a daughter behind that was 3 months at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, with twins, one died.
Oh.
And they wanted me to dedicate her at the funeral.
To God. Dedicate means dedicate to God?
Yeah. So actually, when we finished the funeral, and I said, we're going to close the casket now in this life, but we're going to take another one and lift it up to God.
Oh my goodness. So there was a blessing there.
Yeah, it was an amazing time, actually. When I lifted up that child, and I said, God, come to the point that you took one, but here is the other one. The entire congregation, they said they just felt something like never before. People were crying.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So that's one of the ways you've glorified God through all this.
Absolutely. He's in control. And I let the youth, there were youth, a lot of young people there, the youth, and I let them know that my son was laying in that casket because he was disobedient
mm-hmm.
to his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to them about being obedient to your parents.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're here for. We're here to guide you. We're here to give you counsel, and never take that, lightly. Your parents were given to you by God,
mm-hmm.
and they give you good instruction.
Yeah, that's a perfect illustration.
Yeah.
And isn't that one of the commandments, one of the 10 commandments?
That's right. That's right. It's the 5th commandment, and that is that to honor your mother and your father. And it comes with a promise. It's the only commandment that comes with a promise, that you might live long and that you might have that you may prosper and live long.
Wow. What's the other one that comes with a promise?
That's it. That's the 5th.
You said two.
No, there's two promises in that commandment.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, honor your mother and your father that you might live long and you might prosper.
Beautiful.
So besides that, we can't. If we move away from that, we're going to find ourselves in a lot of trouble. I moved away from that. My father left home when I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So although he was a musician, he was, he provided for us. He left at 5. After that, my mother, she didn't know how to speak, English very well. She had no job, so we had to do what we had to do to survive. Yeah. So I hit the streets young,
mm-hmm.
and I found my niche in the streets with music and playing in the clubs, and I got to play with some Latin orchestras and things like that. So it was,
interesting.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you play what kind of music?
Well, you know what? I was trained in all kinds of music. I own a recording studio, and I've recorded over 50 albums with different people and all kinds of music, from Latin, funk, jazz, salsa, you name it. I've played a lot of music. I've been in music for 40 years now.
40 years. What instruments do you play?
I played bass for about 40 years, guitar
mm-hmm.
for about 35 years, piano over 25,
wow.
and all percussion.
Wow. So for a parent who may be dealing with a very serious situation with a child right now, either the child is very sick or they've lost a child, I understand there's nothing that eases that pain. What would you say to them? What about prayer, about the Bible, about God, about... You are someone who can speak to this because you've been through it.
Go to the Creator, because He knows your heart. See, there's no one that can comfort you in your time of grief like God. He's the God of all comfort. And whenever people lose children, I always pray, God, comfort them. The pain is going to be there. I don't know if I feel the pain so much about his death more than the pain of my memory of him, but I keep his picture in my living room where I can see it every single day. Some people put their children's picture away. They don't want to look at it.
Right.
I say keep it there. Look at it. Let it have its way in your heart. Because it works, you know, with that, and of course prayer, you get used to the fact that, oh, you know what, I still have my son in my heart. I still have his memories in my heart. And it's okay to look at his picture. And I'm good with that. And I've learned to accept that.
And what about his siblings? He has brothers and sisters?
Yes. Well, I have 4 daughters, and I have another son who just came from the Air Force. He's with me right now.
And did they know him?
Yes.
I mean, because I think you had 2 families, so they knew him, and you're able to comfort your family a lot,
Yes,
I'm sure about this.
Yeah, we're strong through it, yeah.
Wow.
We trusted the Lord. Yeah.
And what scripture would you like to share today? What's one of your favorite scriptures?
You know, one of my favorite scriptures is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, and I love it. It has transformed my life, and that is, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. My whole desire in life is to be pure.
Beautiful. Tell me about your children.
Briefly. They're exciting.
They're
They're
exciting.
all different.
I'm excited with your daughter, Abigail.
Yeah,
in fact.
I think she's the only one that inherited the music aspect. She's an incredible young lady. She writes, she can play piano and sing.
Beautiful. And I understand that she's here today. Would you like to introduce her? Because we're about to bring her on.
Well, yeah, Abigail, she's just a great all around when it comes to music and piano. So here she is, Abigail. She's going to do a poem.
Dear you, yeah, you, the person listening, it's God using me trying to get your attention, yes. See, he remembers the first day that he made you. He molded your lungs for the breath that he gave you, and not to mention the day he saved you, or when he opened your eyes by the Spirit Christ was raised through. And did I mention that he forgave you? He had his flesh ripped off of the sin you was enslaved to. Now it seems you're too far gone and you want to turn back, but you're not sure if you'll be welcome home, so you figure you just leave it alone. But you're addicted to yourself. We both know you can't see it alone. This is an intervention, and Jesus intervened. He intercedes on behalf of the sinner's deeds. This is an intervention because the Lord hurts, and before it gets worse, stomach another verse, because with cold water we drink and hot water we cook. But lukewarm, it does nothing, it just sits and it looks, and that's you imagine these as the words of Christ. I remember you loved me. I remember your light. It used to shine bright, but now it's so dim, and it used to be about us, but now it's about them. You can't win playing heart games, but I love you even when your light's off in your dark shame. When you lay down and profane me, or when your bloodstream contains the things that would defame me. When nobody knows that you claim me, or when you mess your life up, get mad, then want to blame me. I still want you back, and I won't punish you. I took that on the cross because I wanted you. I might discipline and chastise, but if I got what you deserve, you'd be in hell with other bad guys. You made it this far, and that's a big move, but your addiction is hurting your other friends too. Some of them missed you, some of them dissed you, but they was hurting and struggling to forgive you. And they hated how your addiction got the best of you. You chose a lie when God promised the best in you. If you realize that you're living in sin, just confess and realize you're forgiven of sin.
Hello again, and thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you have any thoughts or concerns or ideas for a show or questions, please contact us. Our information is below. And remember, we want to know what's on your heart.